And as I proceed with my statement, Your Honor, I stand before this court to assert that this is Katrina's day, and it's hers and hers alone. This is the day where we acknowledge that Katrina's life matters. I want to show you, these are the shoes. These are Katrina's shoes. These are the shoes that she put on the morning of August 2nd as she prepared to work and wore throughout the workday. As tiny as they are, Your Honor, these are the shoes of a giant, a valiant warrior, and a queen. Chanel Lewis, I have no doubt at all that you are fully and completely capable to comprehend everything that I am about to say to you. That the vacant expression you show is merely a reflection of your detached and empty soul. You've proven over and over again you are a very clever and capable man, Chanel Lewis. Contacting and complaining to news reporters, boasting about your front page notoriety, your phone searches, especially those made after you voluntarily submitted your DNA, are particularly revealing of your resourcefulness, knowing your secret would soon be exposed. From the Bible, we are told this about God. He reveals the deep things of darkness and brings utter darkness into the light. This is what God does. As an alleged God-fearing man, I will remind you that the very second you laid your loathsome hand upon a child of God, my daughter, my innocent daughter, you rejected the Holy Spirit and carried out the work of Satan. The angels wept and the devils danced with delight as you proceeded to torture and impose the most brutal and merciless slaying of my beautiful baby. So repulsive are you that you left her hidden to be further desecrated in the summer heat by bugs and animals. Like a snake, you slithered away into the night with your secrets and your feculent wounded hand and your lies. While we suffered and died a million deaths every second of every day, you breathed, you ate, you searched your phone for pornography and forcible rape. But God was watching you all the time, Chanel Lewis. You were, you are, and you remain true to your character as a pathetic, evil coward. You are remorseless as you ask for restitution and second chances. My hope is that you live a long life within the prison of the law and the prison of your conscience. And when the time comes that you face our Heavenly Father, I assure you, you will not fool him with your lies. He knows exactly what you did on the evening of August 2nd, 2016. And he promises me, vengeance is mine. I will repay. I conclude this portion of my statement to you with a stanza of Katrina's most favorite poem. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But still, like air, I rise. Your Honor, I fully appreciate this opportunity to publicly address this court and express the impact inflicted upon me and my family since the inconceivable death of my treasured daughter, Katrina and Francesca Vetrano. After racking my frazzled brain for countless days in effort to verbalize the devastation created by the monster, the convicted sexual abuser and murderer, Chanel Lewis, I've concluded It is impossible for mere words to qualify the depth and vastness of these tribulations. Even in my attempt to write this statement, I was further impacted in revisiting the magnitude of the horrors inflicted. So to summarize, but not minimize, I must first acknowledge that the true victim here is my innocent daughter, Katrina, who brutally suffered her last moments on earth in battle with this evil, angry, and perverted man, Chanel Lewis. It was Katrina who was ambushed, alone and helpless. It was Katrina who was terrorized, beaten, battered, strangled, desecrated, and killed. Yet, I assert that in the early evening hours of August 2nd, 2016, Chanel Lewis slaughtered me as well. Every loving parent recognizes the death of their child as the most incomprehensible and highest infliction to be endured. These years that have followed since he succeeded with his gruesome slaying of my child, I experienced the savage execution of his demonic desires countless times daily, in the light of day and the endless darkness of night. Imagining her deep, precious eyes that reflected her most radiant, emphatic soul, filled with pain and terror, gasping and struggling, looking into the empty, merciless eyes of this angry, enraged stranger provokes a level of excruciating pain and fury that I never before could have conceived. My grief counselors have told me that grief includes losing a part of oneself. But Your Honor, I've lost all of myself. I only see glimpses of the woman I once was when I'm with my grandson, who is the only person in my life that is still innocent and unaware of the abomination we exist with. He was only 3 months old when Chanel Lewis killed his aunt, Riri. He will never remember her loving arms embracing him or her genuine awe at the miracle of his creation. Through our dedication to keep Katrina alive, he knows all about her. He knows she loves butterflies. He knows Aunt Riri is in heaven with God. With the inquisitiveness of a 3-year-old, as he puts it, he tells me a question. I'm usually so pleased to answer the questions he tells me. But Your Honor, I was actually speechless recently when he asked me so sweetly, Ami, when is Riri coming back? Among her multitudes of attributes, Katrina was born and gifted with extraordinary intellect and profound wisdom in appreciating life and emotions. Katrina is a passionate writer and used her talent to express herself. Her love of language led her to her chosen and hard-earned profession as a speech pathologist for autistic children. It was more than a career. It was her vocation to share her gift of communication by being of service to others. I've chosen to share a portion of one of Katrina's writings that I feel will demonstrate but a morsel of the character of my magnificent child, a warrior and a queen. I am in a state of, this is Katrina's words, I am in a state of awe of all the majesties that life has to offer. And it only occurs when I'm with nature. These little microscopic things that I let bother me, parking tickets, an unanswered text, some girl who I don't even like doesn't like me. But why? The guy who didn't put his blinker on. I let these things consume me. It is all these pathetic pieces of everyday life that give me so much grief. And then I put my running sneakers on, I plug my headphones into my ears, I hit the pavement, and it all goes on mute. I feel God everywhere. God is in the innocence of animals. In white clouds radiate some kind of magical beam. God in the trees, the moon, the stars, in a breeze on a summer day. And I'm here soaking in all the natural, honest art of God. And for now, it all makes perfect, sublime sense. And it blows my mind, she says. We are fascinating beings with minds so sickeningly powerful, with the ability to communicate, to build, to climb mountains and run marathons, and produce music and art, to create life and literature. We were given emotion, such a tender, beautiful gift, emotion. We are the only species that is able to literally express how much we care about another being with pure words. How lucky can we possibly be? And what do we do with it? God exists. It's everywhere. It's in all the things beautiful that we cannot explain. I know it without a doubt in my mind. I know it every time I take the time out to be alone outside. I don't think I need to point out the heart-shattering irony here, Your Honor, but rather I choose to receive this as Katrina's validation to us that while the demon, the predator, Chanel Lewis, attacked, tortured, and murdered her, Katrina was in a state of grace and prayer. She was worshiping her Heavenly Father. And with that, I believe she ascended directly to God's kingdom, where she now sits, holding his righteous right hand for eternity. And to conclude, Your Honor, I just recommend that this self-confessed and committed and convicted sexual abuser and murderer, Chanel Lewis, I implore you to impose the most severe sentence allowed by law. He has shown absolutely no remorse for his deplorable crimes. He chose to execute his crimes in the most brutal and merciless manner. His disregard for life is clearly demonstrated through his cavalier attitude during his confessions and searches on the internet for pardons after brutally taking the life of an innocent stranger and destroying an entire family. He is a liar and has no moral conscience, as he sat before this court and heard and allowed his attorney to insinuate to the jury, that my husband, the beloved father, best friend and hero of his victim, held responsibility for the savagery that he himself imposed. If he was ever released from incarceration, he would be in the care of those who do not even acknowledge his crimes or recognize his propensity to violence. Had his previous threats to harm women been recognized and addressed, my daughter, my beautiful, precious daughter, Katrina Ann Vetrano, would still be alive. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please.
Your Honor, you had the opportunity to preside over both trials in this case, and so I don't need to dwell on the evidence in front of you because you know it firsthand from hearing it. This was a senseless and a brutal crime. The defendant did not even know his victim. She was a complete stranger. They happened to be occupy the same space on this trail in the secluded and isolated area of Spring Creek Park at the same time on the same fateful day. And this defendant made a series of decisions. He made the decision to not let her pass. He made the decision to attack her for whatever reasons he had. If you want to credit what he said in his confession, that he was angry about some event that had taken place earlier in the day, or if it was something else, or if it was motivated by some sort of sexual desire on his part. He knows the answers to those questions. But he made a decision to not allow her to pass. He made a decision to attack her, to throw her to the ground. He was almost a foot taller than her and about 40 pounds heavier than her. And he punched her and punched her and punched her repeatedly. You saw the autopsy pictures. You saw the crime scene pictures. You know the brutality of this crime committed by this defendant upon a complete stranger, an innocent victim. He showed her not 1 ounce of mercy as she fought for her life. Her last moments on this earth, Your Honor, were filled, I suggest, with fear and with pain. And then he wrapped his hands around her neck. And you heard the testimony of Dr. Pryor, and you heard her tell you, and tell this jury, the jury that heard this case, that it would take at least 20 seconds before she would be rendered unconscious, before she would no longer be able to fight. But that wouldn't cause death. Death was caused when he continued to exert 11 pounds of pressure symmetrically on both sides of her neck for 2 to 3 minutes, until every last ounce of breath was gone from her lungs, and every last bit of life was gone from her veins. He took everything that she had and everything that she would ever have again. And he did it while he sexually abused her, while he pulled down her clothes to expose her private areas for his own sexual gratification. He murdered her, and then he discarded her body in those weeds as if she were nothing. And he went on with his life until he was discovered 6 months later as a result of what he left behind, of the DNA that he left behind under Karina's fingernails, the DNA he left behind on her neck, the DNA he left behind on her phone. All his, no one else's. No one. His. He sought treatment for the injury that he sustained by beating her and cracking her tooth in a hospital in Brooklyn the very next day. And when his DNA was discovered as a result of him being acting in a suspicious fashion months before he even killed Katrina, Your Honor, you didn't have the opportunity to preside over the hearing in this case. But Lieutenant Russo told the hearing court that one of the reasons why they focused on the defendant and why he asked investigators to go out and speak to the defendant after recalling this incident in May of 2016 before Karina died, when he saw the defendant acting suspiciously in the Howard Beach area. When he ran the defendant in the computer, he saw that there were 80 cards he testified to, and that those 80 cards indicated that the defendant had previously indicated a desire to hurt women. And that was part of the reason why he sent detectives to speak to the defendant and to see if he would consensually give a DNA swab, which he did in the presence of his mother. And it's as a result of that fine police work that this defendant was identified as the perpetrator of this heinous, vicious crime. And then he was treated civilly. You saw the videotape confessions. You saw it all. And you saw how civilly he was treated by members of the New York City Police Department. And that his statements were voluntary in nature after being provided all of his constitutional rights. And then he went to trial.
Point out.
He went to trial, and he was given a fair trial by this court. He was given a fair trial by a jury of his peers that he participated in selecting. And that jury saw the same thing that you did, Your Honor, the same thing that everybody did, that this defendant is guilty of these crimes as proven beyond any reasonable doubt by the credible evidence presented in this case. This is a parent's worst nightmare. The child goes out for an afternoon run and never returns. The anguish that this family has gone through for these 2.5 years is unimaginable. Your Honor, you have a great deal of discretion here as to what to sentence this defendant to. This defendant has never shown an ounce of remorse. The evidence in this case is overwhelming. The amount of brutality in this case is unspeakable, and the sexual component to this case is disgusting. This defendant is a danger to society. The crime that he committed is unspeakable, and the brutality that he engaged in is unimaginable. And for those reasons, I am asking this court to sentence the defendant for the crime of murder in the first degree to the maximum period of incarceration permitted under the law. And that is a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. With respect to murder in the second degree under a felony murder theory, I'm asking this court to sentence the defendant to the maximum term of imprisonment authorized by law of 25 years to life. For the crime of sexual abuse in the first degree, I'm asking this court to sentence the defendant to the maximum period of incarceration permitted by law, which I believe is 237 years incarceration. Those sentences I'm asking this court, and I suggest that this court, must run concurrently with each other. There is one remaining count, however, the count of intentional murder in the second degree, that stands apart from the sexual abuse count, that stands apart from the intentional murder in the first degree count that also has a component of sexual abuse in it, and it stands apart from felony murder in the second degree based upon the sexual abuse. Intentional murder in the second degree stands alone. The intent to cause the death of another person, he caused the death of Katrina Vetrano. That is a crime that he was convicted of as well. And for that crime, I'm asking this court to sentence the defendant to the period of incarceration, maximum period of incarceration, of 25 years to life. And I'm asking that this court run that sentence consecutively to the sentence of 2 1/3 to 7 years for the crime of sexual abuse in the first degree. Those two crimes do not share any of the same elements, and they are distinct acts. And I'm asking the court for those reasons to sentence the defendant to consecutive sentences of intentional murder in the second degree, sexual abuse in the first degree, 25 to life for the intentional murder, 2 1/3 to 7 for sexual abuse in the first degree, in the second. Thank you, Judge, for presiding over this case, and thank you for providing the people and for the defendant a fair trial.
Good morning, Your Honor. On behalf of our client, Channel Lewis, we first want to acknowledge the tragic nature of Ms. Vetrano's death. We recognize the impact that her death has had on her family, her friends, and her community, and nothing in our statement seeks to diminish that. In sentencing Mr. Lewis in this case, we ask Your Honor to consider the pre-sentencing memorandum that was submitted along with letters of support from Mr. Lewis's neighbors, friends, and family. We also ask Your Honor to consider the support Mr. Lewis has in the courtroom with him today and that he's had throughout the 2 trials, including his mother and his sister. We also want to tell you who our client is. Mr. Lewis stands before you a 22-year-old man. Prior to his arrest in this case, at the age of 20, Mr. Lewis had never before been arrested. He grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, the son of immigrants from Jamaica. His father, Richard Lewis, worked as a teacher and an administrator in Jamaica and worked as a teacher in Brooklyn. His father is also a pastor. His mother, Vita Lewis, is a nursing assistant at an assisted living facility, a position she has held for the past 17 years. Mr. Lewis has 6 half-brothers and sisters. Both of his parents are naturalized citizens. His parents separated when he was 10 years old, and he split his time between his 2 parents' homes. Throughout his childhood and until the time of his arrest, he lived only with his family, his older sisters, and later young nieces and nephews. Channel and his family regularly attended church services, and they are a deeply religious family. Channel graduated from a high school for students with emotional disabilities, and he was working on enrolling in a vocational training program. The pre-sentencing memorandum we submitted has letters of support from community members. Specifically, a family friend and member of his church states that he's known Channel for 11 years and that he is a, quote, caring and pleasant young man. Another family friend writes that ever since Channel was a child, she's known him to be a loving and caring person, and she never once saw him get angry or raise his voice. She states that Channel would prepare a cup of tea for his mother after a long day at work and even rub her feet. Since Channel's arrest, his father, Richard, has decompensated significantly. He is now in a nursing home for patients with dementia. He's been unable to attend any of his son's court appearances, nor does he fully comprehend what is happening to his child. His mother, Vita Lewis, has also suffered a great deal since her son's arrest. Before his arrest, he always made sure Mrs. Lewis had dinner after a long shift, and the two of them were very close. His incarceration at Rikers in Orange County and at Riverhead has been tremendously difficult on the family and Mrs. Lewis specifically. Nevertheless, she's rearranged her work schedule to make every court appearance for the past 2.5 years, and she visits with Channel multiple times a week. The prospect of visiting her son in prison, potentially hundreds of miles away, is devastating to her, and she relies on her faith and her community to keep going. Again, Your Honor, there is no doubt that what happened to Katrina Vetrano was a tragedy, and that her family and community have suffered an exceedingly difficult loss. We ask Your Honor to allow Mr. Lewis's sealed pre-sentencing memorandum, probation report, and accompanying documents to be entered into his packet as he is sentenced, so that he may be placed in a correctional facility that is best equipped to provide the social and vocational services that he needs. We thank this court for your consideration of all of these factors when imposing your sentence. We will be asking for a concurrent sentence, and we thank Your Honor.
Mr. Lewis, anything you wish to say to this court before I sentence you, sir?
The only thing I want to say, Judge, is that I'm innocent. I'm sorry for the family's loss, but I didn't do this.
Anything else? Anything else, Mr. Lewis?
No, sir. No, sir.
I can't hear you, Mr. Muller. I'm sorry.
Just briefly, Mr. Leventhal made some reference to our probation report and the information that was contained in it. And while it's true that we did not pursue a psychiatric defense in this case after careful consideration, that information was not put in there to allege in any way that Mr. Lewis is unfit to proceed. There's no traditionally sounding defense type, but I think that that information should be included in your court's determination over what should happen to this young man. I think his background and intellectual, physical condition is something that you should take into account. The statement that was made that in some way, shape, or form the defendant had admitted committing the crime to the forensic psychologist is a stretch of an inference I would submit to the court. As the court's aware, when people are being interviewed for possible psychiatric defenses or conditions, those professionals need to know the context of why they're there and what happened that led them to be there. And of course, when this doctor did that, he had all that information available to him and knew about this case and the facts of this case. So I just want that to be clear before you pronounce your sentence, Judge.
I've been personally involved in the criminal justice system virtually my entire adult life. And I got to say quite honestly that it's sometimes difficult not to become jaded or even sometimes numb. And not only what I see, but what we collectively see on virtually a daily basis. And then you're confronted with a crime such as this. Not to say that one victim's life is more precious than another victim, or one family's grief is more impactful than another family's grief. But a case like this has an effect to shake you because it kind of dispels the fallacy that as long as we confine ourselves to our neighborhood and do what we do on a daily basis in the presence of our loved ones and our neighbors, we're somehow safe. We want to believe that, we have to believe that, and then we just can't believe it because this is what happens. A random, senseless, horrific crime like this happens, and it has such a wide-ranging effect. We went through so many jurors in 2 cases who said we can't sit here because not only do we know about the case, we've modified the way we live our lives. We tell our kids, now, don't go by yourself when you go run. You have to run with the corner. You can't go into a particular area. And it has this collective sense of grief. There's so much that we're exposed to, and so much I just still can't comprehend. As long as I've been doing this, it's a lose-lose situation for both families, always, always, always. But there is something that keeps me going. Clearly, I believe this with all my heart, every fiber of my being, that God, who is at this very moment embracing Katrina Vetrano, I believe this, who is providing solace and comfort not only to the family, but to the community who's suffering your crime, that same God is ready, willing, and anxious to forgive you for this crime. One person and one person can make that happen, Mr. Lewis, and that's you. Your protestations of being innocent, that was not designed for me. It was designed for your followers, I'm sure. But in the not-too-distant future, you're going to wake up, and you're going to find that a lot of these followers have moved on to another cause, another case, and you're going to be by yourself, very, very lonely. And I suggest to you at that point, you put into practice the penance that you researched after you brutally and savagely molested and murdered this young girl. That's my advice to you. But I will say one thing. When you do, and if you do, come to that decision, you're going to do it inside a cage. That's a guarantee. With respect to murdering the first degree, the sentence of this court is that you spend the rest of your natural life in jail without any possibility of parole. With respect to murder in the second degree, intentional murder, the sentence of this court is that you spend 25 years minimum, maximum of life. Third count, felony murder, the sentence of this court is that you're sentenced to 25 years to the rest of your natural life. With respect to sexual abuse in the first degree, the sentence is that you have a determined period of incarceration of 7 years, followed by 10 years of post-release supervision. Counts 1, counts 3, and counts 4 are to run concurrent. Count 2 is to run consecutive to counts 1, 3, and 4. With respect to count 4, there's a Sex Offender Registration Act that you must sign. The mandatory surcharge of $300, crime victim assistance fee of $25, DNA fee of $50, sex offender registration fee of $50, and a supplemental sex offender victim fee of $1,000. Come out of your inmate funds, advise this defendant of his right to appeal.
For the record, the defendant being handed a copy of his right to appeal. Point of check. Maintain the audience. Justice for Chanel! Justice for Chanel! Justice for Chanel! Chanel is innocent!
second.